My guest today, I'm delighted to remind you, is Brian Wilson. Welcome back, Brian.
Hi.
A lot of people in those early days of the Capitol Tower trying to get a reputation as a decent studio in a town where there was a lot of great studios.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people used to complain, other rock and roll acts on the label. I remember Johnny Otis often saying he was not happy with what Capitol could offer as a studio. The separation wasn't good, and even, I think Gene Vincent once said the same thing.
Yeah.
Would you have said that was a reason to stay away and go to other studios?
Yeah, it was. I went back and forth between Western and Gold Star, you know. We had a list of studios that we liked, although to actually tell a story about how Good Vibrations came to exist as a record, what I had to do to get that to happen, I went to 5 studios, cut 5 different sections of it. The record itself took 6 weeks, working every day. So we had, at the end of that 6 weeks, we had a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece of a record, but it lacks something. It lacks funkiness. It's too smooth or too cut and dried. You know, edit here and this is edited there, and let's put a chorus in here. Let's do a nice drum roll, and then all of a sudden we'll come into a real dry cello and a different kind of drum off of like a big bass drum and a big tambourine and a tambourine and a big tom-tom sound and a big snare sound. Then we drop down to a little skimpy little chorus, like, I'm picking up good vibrations, you know. And I thought, while I was making it, I said, oh, we're really into something here. We're into a real project. But then later I said, well, we've made better records than Good Vibrations, you know. But, yeah, it took 6 weeks. Yeah, hard work, a lot of hard work.
When you say you would edit at the early stages, would you be editing mixes down to a 1/4-inch, 2-track, or would you do it on 4 or 8-track at that time?
8-track.
You do a multi-track edit?
Yeah, what we did was we recorded on 4-track in one studio and took it over to an 8-track studio and overdubbed the 4 tracks onto a couple tracks of the 8-track. And we kept ping-ponging from studio to studio, and finally we wound up, the production wound up over at RCA Victor. And, no, excuse me, at Columbia, at Columbia Studios.
Uh-huh.
And I just wound up over there. That's when we wound up singing the voices. None of the voices were done anywhere else. The voices were all done at Columbia. The background part of it, the track part of it, was done at Sunset Studio, Gold Star Studio, Western Studio, RCA Victor Studio, and CBS at 5.
Oh.
And the cello was overdubbed at CBS. The na-na-na-na-na-na-na, those backgrounds at the end of the song were done at CBS. It was all just, it fractured me when I heard it, though. I was happy with it. I said, you know, you can't get a better record than this. I mean, you know, I sought out to do a good record, and I did, and I made it.
We just heard the classic Good Vibrations, bringing back lots of memories, which are not clouded at all. You recall the studios. You almost mentioned who was on the sessions, and Larry Knechtel playing on the thing, and all kinds of people in there.
Yeah. Most people will call our music Chuck Berry influenced and the Four Freshmen influence, but our real true roots come from Phil Spector, and that's where the Beach Boys left off with the Spectorian production technique with the echo and the proper use of echo, and then of course the phenomenon of achieving one sound out of 2, mixing 2 things to become one. You know, making a guitar and a piano sound like a third thing, rather than, hey, I hear that as a guitar and a piano. They say, hey, dig the sound, you know. That's what we learned to do. And not to mention being more critical about bass lines and seeing how much you can say with how little. If you create something very great with just very little, and you know, then you're doing what Phil Spector did and what the Beach Boys do. And so that's the way that was. Our roots go back to Phil Spector and even farther back. But I mean, it's more of a just rock and roll, you know,
music.
Yeah.
Did Phil ever put his head round the door just to check out what was going on a Beach Boys session at all? I
do believe he did, but I'm not sure when. It's all, you know, as far as in my mind, I'm not real sure about what we used to do, because I'm a person who took a lot of drugs and it ruined my memory. It goofed my memory up. I refuse to remember certain things in my life, and that's one of the things I don't know. You know.
How did that situation come about? Was it a pressure of work thing, or was it the temptation of trying new things out, what, say, the Beatles may have done in England and vice versa?
Oh, you're talking about Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And
That's what I was getting at.
Well,
yeah.
Paul McCartney told me on the phone, and also to other people in the business, in the industry, that he thought Pet Sounds was one of the greatest albums ever made. So he was paying homage to me. He was paying his respects to our talents as singers and producers, you know. And I was very grateful for that. And, of course, I thought that, except for Burt Bacharach, I think Paul McCartney should be considered to be the most prolific songwriter in the last 30 years.